Howdy there, partners. There are very few rifles out there that can elicit as strong of a yeehaw quite like a lever action can. Now, if there's one thing that the American population knows about the US Constitution, it's the Second Amendment. This is reflected in a 2017 small arms poll conducted by the US Census Bureau, where they found that out of a population of 326 million Americans, there were approximately 393 million guns. While rifles are about as American as anything can get, when most Americans think of a rifle, they think of a bolt action rifle like a Remington Model 700 or a gas operated semi automatic weapon like an AR 15. With this info in mind, today we will learn how to safely handle a lever action rifle, how the safety mechanism of a lever action rifle works, and how to safely load and unload a lever action rifle. Now, how you hold a lever action rifle goes for across the board. Ideally, what you want to do is to make sure that the muzzle is pointing up and away from anyone. You'd want to grip the foregrip with one of your hands and the other grip towards the rear stock, preferably around the butt with the other hand. Another thing to keep in mind is to never have your finger on the trigger. The only time you should have your finger on the trigger is if you're ready to shoot a round. And if you're going to shoot a round, you must accept the responsibilities that come with that action. Now, on most bolt action rifles or semi automatic rifles, there's usually a lever or a button somewhere around the trigger group that, when you flip it, engages or disengages the safety mechanism. But on this lever action, as you'll see, it's not present. That's because the safety mechanism is located here in the hammer. Now, there are three major positions that the hammer can be in. Right now, the hammer is what is known as uncocked, which means that it's resting on the firing pin. You must never leave it at uncocked because let's say there's a round in the chamber and you accidentally drop the rifle. It can land on the hammer with enough force to where it can cause a negligent discharge, which means an accidental firing of a round. The next position that the hammer could be in is, of course, fully cocked. This means it is all the way as far back as it can goes, and it's ready to fire. Now, you don't want to leave it in full cocked either, for the same reason as I said before. If there's a round in the chamber, and you accidentally drop the rifle, it can land on the hammer with enough force to send the hammer forward into the firing pin, causing a negligent discharge. Another reason why you don't want to leave it at fully cocked is because even the slightest amount of pressure on the trigger will send the hammer forward into the firing pin and cause a potential negligent discharge. The third position that the hammer can be in is what is known as half cock. Half cock essentially means it is neither touching the firing pin nor is it fully back as if ready to fire. The cool thing about the half cock position is that it locks both the hammer and the trigger in position, meaning that if you were to drop the rifle and it lands on the hammer, the chances of it landing with enough force to strike the firing pin are significantly lower. It also locks the trigger in place, meaning that even the slightest amount of pressure on the trigger will not cause the gun to fire. With the safety of a lever action covered, how do we safely load and unload a lever action? Right here on the case is a little groove that you can push in and out. This is called the loading gate. What you want to do is you want to take your cartridge. You want to have the narrowest, pointiest end of the bullet to go in first. Now, how do we chamber the round? All you must do is first make sure your finger stays off the trigger. All you have to do is cycle the action. But how do we get how do we get the bullet out of the chamber? Same way as putting it in. First, make sure your finger is not on the trigger, then simply cycle the action, and the bullet will eject out of the chamber. Today, we have learned how to safely handle a lever-action rifle, how the safety mechanism of a lever-action works, and how to safely load and unload a lever-action. Since there are on average 1.2 guns for every American, you're going to come across a lever gun eventually. But with today's information, you need not worry about these older types of rifles. As with anything with firearms, stay safe out there. If you're unsure about something, ask a question. Ignorance is not an excuse for negligence. With that in mind, aim high, shoot long, and I hope to see you on the range one day.